Hey, this is Dr. Linda Davis, and today I'm going to go through for the MBA 610 class, Basic Statistics Part 2 this time in Moodle. For week 5, you'll need to download and print out the PDF on Basic Statistics Part 2. And notice that you don't have a file to download because we're going to work from the previous file and build off that, which was the Mr. O's survey that I had you download before, that you've already put some information on that. And then we'll submit when we're done here. Okay, so let's get started. We'll continue on with the one that we kind of finished up already. And a couple of things I want to point out on this. On the PDF that you should have printed out and have in front of you now, we have several ranges already named in here. So in the data sheet, which is this obviously same data sheet that we had before, we want to show that we've got some named ranges. So let me go up here to these and let me click on that name field and show you what's there. There's a range called blend, which is probably if it's a dark or medium or light coffee, which is over here. If I click on blend, you can see it light up that particular area, which makes sense, right? If we go into coffee, click on that range that's already named for us. That's the actual brand names of the coffees that we're working on. And then cups we've already kind of worked with. That's that range, obviously. And hours, that's the other column. And we also have meals there. Okay, I didn't go all the way up to the top, so but you can see, let me do that now so you can see that the column headings correlate with the ranges that we've named. It just makes it easier when you're not having to type in a whole range. You can just type in a range name when you're doing functions, calculations, and it just makes things a little bit easier for you. So those ranges are done for you already. You did not have to do those. Now, the first thing on part 2 is let's go to Q1, sheet Q1. So we'll go down to Q1. Daily cups of coffee. Okay, we're doing a frequency deal here, and on this one we're going to use a special function here called the countif function. So for the cups of coffee, complete the frequency distribution table and create a histogram graph. Now, some people automatically think, oh, well, we've got to put mode in here and use the mode function, and no, we're not doing that on this. Instead, we're using our countif function. It's going to be used to calculate the frequency. This is a conditional count only if the criteria is met. It sounds hard, but it's really easy. The range cups represent the given data, and cell B3 contains the criteria equal to, the relationship is assumed. This formula counts the number of times the value of 0. For instance, in cell B3 we have a 0, right? So there's this, in cell B3 we have a 0. If that's found in the range called cups, then count it is what we're asking it to do. So we should get 11. So let's try it out and see. So we say equals, of course, and then countif, and we want it to count the range called cups. Notice it's the little bit right there, countif range comma criteria. Is trying to give you a hint on what it should be next, which is the range. So the range is called cups in this one, obviously, again, and then comma, what's the criteria? That's the next part it's looking for. The criteria for this row, remember, we get it right on this row, then we can just, drag it down, drag the formula down. The criteria is going to be that it's got to be whatever's inside B3, in which case B3 is 0, so that's what it's going to be looking for. It's going to be scanning the range called cups, looking for zeros, and it's going to count how many times it finds a 0. Now I'm going to hit enter to lock that in. So basically it went into the cups range and it counted how many zeros were in that range, and it came up with 11. 11 times 0 showed up in that range. All right, so like I said, you're going to get the skinny plus, which means we're going to copy that formula all the way down. And the brilliance of how this works, obviously, is like when you look at that second row, which is actually row 4, you'll look at the formula. Let me pop the formula back up there. Now it says the same formula, except it changed that to B4. B4, you have a number 1 in there. So now it's going to go look in that cups range, and it's going to find all the ones and count how many times 1 appeared in that range. And that's why we get 7. It found 7 times the number 1 appeared in that range. Okay, so it automatically changes itself because you're dragging it down. It knows to take it to B3, B4, B5, B6, B7, and so on, and put that particular cell name in there so it knows to go look for that number. Okay, so just think about that for a minute. Now, we got a count function down here we want to put in. That's easy, equals count. And then we want it to count what? Well, we want it to count cups. Okay, so we will just have it do that. What were the total amount of cups? Well, once you say put that in, and let me pop that up there again for you. Let me get that back up there. Okay. Count equals count, and then just put cups. Count all the items in that particular part. Now, the mean, that's the average, remember? So Excel likes to see this instead. Equals average. And then you can, again, just say cups. Find that range and do it. And so there's your average, 2.28. And then standard deviation, we'll put that in again as well. And STDEV. And then we want to put in, again, that same range, cups. So that takes care of that part for us. And we want to go into the next part, and we want to it's asking us on the top of the next one to create a histogram. A histogram is a volume or a column graph with no gap between the columns. Sounds hard, but it's not. In this situation, the X data is numerical, and because the X data is numerical in this case, you cannot identify the X data before starting the graph. It must be defined later. So, which means we can just select the Y data now and then go back and add the X data. I really think it might even work with the later versions of Office if we just go ahead and do frequency and then find out and highlight what follows. Now, we just selected what we think we need for the actual histogram graph. We're going to do histogram graphs start off as basic column graphs, and then we're going to modify it a little bit. So we'll go to Insert after we've selected frequency and those values. Go to Insert, and then we'll go to the column, the charts area. Obviously, that's your column graph there. You want a simple column graph, which is the 2D column. Nothing fancy there. And you can see how, on the y-axis it's giving you up to 12, because obviously you've got 11, so it's giving you a little extra there. And, the values here, 1 through 8. And we'll see how this plays out for us. And it should have done 0 through 7 instead of 1 through 8. So we need to modify that a little bit, and that's kind of what we were talking about. We can go up to select data. That's when, what it thinks you want and what you really want is two different things. Then it's time to go up to select data. And I'm in Chart Tools, Design tab, and you'll see select data there. I can click on that and I can tell it, hey, the horizontal axis, that's wrong. I don't want 1 through 8, I want 0 through 7. So you can go see there, you get the horizontal axis labels here, right? And go to edit that. And it will let you, let me pull this out of the way. Let me go select what I want. I want 0 through 7. So I can just select B3 all the way down to B10. And as I highlighted it, of course, it adds it in there. And then click on that to have it fix that. It's okay. And if you'll just say okay on that too. And if you'll notice now, if you look at your graph, it's 0 through 7. That's what you want. That accurately reflects what the data in the table is showing. Okay. Now we're not done yet. We've got to do a few things to make it really look like a histogram and just not some 2D column graph. So I'm going to go in and just any particular column, it doesn't matter. I'm going to isolate the column, and that one's just all by itself now activated. I'm going to right click on it, and I can go down to Format Data Point. Doesn't matter which one you pick, really doesn't. Format Data Point pops up on your right side, and you got some choices here, but what you're looking for is gap width. That's all you're doing to make it into a histogram. Pull that back and all the way to the left edge. Notice how your graph changes dramatically. It gets rid of the gaps in between the different columns, and that will look like what you want it to look like, and will agree with what the PDF says it should look like. Now, I want to also get rid of these horizontal grid lines that are in there. If I click on it, you notice like little bubbles come up on each line. That means they're active and you can delete them now. So just hit delete, not backspace, but hit delete on your keyboard. Now, that should go away. It looks a little cleaner. It is not in the right spot, though. I'm going to pull it down. Oops, let me get the right thing. I didn't quite get the right thing. Put that back where it was. Okay. I'm going to grab the whole graph and pull it down underneath the table. Some of you have trouble with where to put graphs at. They go under the tables. And also, the graphs need to be bigger. It's very, you know, obviously it's a visual thing, so you don't want a little bitty thing like a table is. So I would just, it's like an image, so just grab the bottom corner and just, you know, stretch it down a little bit. That's fine. Make it bigger than the table, obviously. And it'll still print out fine for me when I go to grade it. Now, obviously we didn't change the title, but we probably need to, because this should be histogram of daily cups of coffee. So let me change those words out. Oops. There we go. If you want to make it bold, we probably should. Let's just do a Control B and make that bold as well. Now remember, on these videos, I know I keep a certain pace going on, but if I go too fast for you, just pause. Run it back, do it again, run it back, do it again until you understand the concept. All right, so that takes care of that first part. Let's go into the other part of our PDF. On this next part, now that we've done histogram of daily cups of coffee, which you'll see on the next page on the left, the next part is asking us to activate our data tools again. You probably already have them activated, but if not, follow the directions on how to activate your analysis tool packs. I showed that in, I believe, in the other video. Now, let's go down to the data sheets where it's sending us next. So go down to the data sheet, back again, and for the weekly hours on campus, but outside of class, create the frequency distribution table in a histogram graph. Now this one, we're going to kind of put these values into bins, which means we're kind of grouping the hours, like 0 to 4. It's kind of, we're giving it a range, you know, of hours, 5 to 9 hours, or tell me how many, what's going on between 10 and 14 hours. So we're going to do that next. And you can see the math that they did to come up with those particular ranges in the PDF. So what we want to do, we want to select in our data analysis window. Wait, let me go to data analysis. Let me get to the data menu item, and then we'll jump over to the data analysis part. You can select histogram. Okay, just like before, I think we've done descriptive statistics before, but this time we're going to go down to histogram, and we're going to say okay. And it's going to want to know some things. It's going to want to know what ranges we want to put in there. These are specific ranges. So let me go and hit input range here. I don't know if that one's right or not, but I'll delete it out and start fresh. So you can too. So let me hit that first one, input range. What's it want to see? Well, your PDF tells you they want D3 to D52. So D3, there we go, there's D3. Highlight that down to D52. Okay, and then hit that little button next to that to lock that in so it shows up nicely there. And the bin range, that's, let me go to that one. That one you may have a little difficulty finding, but I'll show it to you. Bin range, you've got to go back up to the top of your data sheet here. Bin range is in here. It is K12 to K17. So K, column K is way over here. So we want a K12, I'll highlight that down to K17, yeah, okay. And that's what we want there. So let's, again, now that it's showing there, let's hit the little button to lock that in. You should see it show up right there. We should be good. Now let's see what else we need to do on this. This one, new worksheet, ply, and we don't, I probably already had it in there, so if it wasn't typed in, if it wasn't in there automatically, then you just put Q2 in there. So it'll create a whole new sheet, because you don't have a Q2 sheet right now, but it will create a whole new sheet called Q2 and send it there. All right, so once we've got it there, there's nothing else to check here. Nothing else to check there, so just say OK, and it will develop a Q2 sheet, and it will give you this. Initially, we got to do some stuff to this to make this little table look a little better and work a little better. Now we need to add some, rows and columns here. So we'll right click at the A at the top, like it says to do, and I'm going to right click on the actual column A part and go down to insert. I'm going to insert an extra column, and I'm going to repeat that same process with row 1. Go click on row 1. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to insert another row, basically, so I can stop everything from hugging the top so much. And I've got to add some stuff here. I want to add another column here. This column is going to be called range. Okay. And I may add some more columns and rows when I get done with this. I'll add range. Now, I'm going to put the ranges in that we agreed on from the previous page. So I got to tell you about this. Now, it's 0 to 4 is the first one. So, but I have to put a little apostrophe in first, because these are really non-numerical numbers. I'm not adding them, I'm not subtracting them, I'm not anything like that. But I have to tell Excel that. So the way I tell Excel that is to put that little apostrophe before that. So it looks weird right there, but when I go down to the next cell, you see how it just displays 0 to 4, which is exactly what we want. The next one is 5 to 9, but I got to put the apostrophe in there, 5 to 9. Okay, and then what's the next one? 10 to 14, so apostrophe 10 to 14. And then the next one is 15 to 19, so that's apostrophe 15 to 19. And then after that, 20 to 24, so apostrophe 20 to 24. And like I always, oops, lets me put a dash in there. Hold on, let me fix that. There we go. And then the next one is the range is 25 to 29. Okay, so that's in. It also has a count and a mean part here, so I don't need the more thing, but I'll get rid of that. I'll get rid of that. And instead I'll put count. And underneath that I'll put mean. And then we'll obviously do those calculations in a minute. Let's get it better looking though. It could use some work. I really do want it to, I guess it was okay staying there. We do need to put a title at the top. Total hours on campus, so let's type that in. Total hours on campus. Okay, and if I obviously want that bold, so I'll do a Control B, turn that bold on, and I can also make it highlight it across columns as wide as the table is, so I can do merge cells so that it will center itself over the top of the table. And obviously it needs some formatting with these. First of all, let me get rid of that particular border. Let me highlight those two, so I can say no border there, and then add the borders that I really do want. So I'll say no border, make that one go away. I will go back in and do that. I need the big border, which is the thick outside border there. I need another bottom border here to neaten that up a bit. I also need to do some alignments here on these column headings. Ben needs to align to the right. So does frequency. Yeah, let's align it to the right. Okay, and looks like I might have lost that. Yeah, there we go. Just widen column, see a bit more, make that look a little better. And of course I want to shade those column headings in the soft gray, and just find that there. Okay, all right, and so we're good. Now the two things we got to do down here: count and median. And looks like I need to snap in a bottom border there, so it shows the separation from the regular data. and before we get into the analysis data here. So a count function is obviously what it's calling for, and actually it doesn't want it there, it wants it over here. So we'll do equals count, which means just count our items. They want us to use count hours, because this is what this is all about, is the hours range. Now the hours range is new, so let's put in hours as our range. It was named earlier, remember. Hit enter, and it counts all the hours. And then the mean of that is, of course, the average. So put in average and of the hours range. Okay, so launch that in. That's the values you should get. Now, flip over from your PDF. We'll do another histogram of hours on campus based on this table. Okay, so we will select on this one. We want to select not every column, we want range down just to the last range, and hold control down and do frequency and highlight down to the last frequency. So do not include count or mean data in there. Do not include the middle column either. Okay, and we'll go in and do our histogram. So we'll insert again our 2D column, and let's see how it handled the ranges. So we got 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14. Looks good. Yeah, we can work with this, and it goes up to 20, which is good. Let me pull it down underneath our table, and obviously I want to make it a little bigger and deeper, more like that. And let's take care of it and make it a histogram. Again, just pick any column, and then right click on the column itself and select Format Data Series, so that you can get rid of the gap. So we have our gap width tool over here on the right side, and swing that back there to that point, and there we go. I also want to get rid of the grid lines, so I'm going to activate a grid line, and they all pop up activated, so I'll hit delete to make those grid lines go away. And I need to give it a title, so I'm going to go up to frequency and just highlight it so I can just type over it basically and get it what I want it to say. Of course, I want it to say histogram of hours on campus. And I want to bold that. Looking good. Okay. You probably want to add some headings on here, some axis titles. I may not have done that on the previous one, but no, you should do that. And so in chart tools, I can go into add chart element. I can go into axis titles, and I need one for both, so I need one for the horizontal. That one should be called hours on campus, obviously. Let me get in there. And on the vertical axis, the y-axis, let me go up there, add chart element again. So axis title, primary vertical. Gives me a little text box there to work with. And on that one, I need it to say frequency. I actually like them to go vertical like that when they display, so it doesn't take up so much room. And I'll Control B to make that bold. Same thing here, I need to make it Control B to make it bold. And that should be good for that one. Okay. The next part is go to Q4. Now, Q4, preferred brand of coffee. So we'll do a frequency distribution and create a histogram graph on that as well. It says for cell C3 to C7. You want to use the same technique as you used on the Q1 sheet to calculate the frequency for each brand of coffee. So you've done this before. You just got to change your range name because you're talking about brand of coffee. You know, it's like Starbucks and Folgers and some other kind of coffee. So I want to do a countif again, just like we did on the last one. And the range is going to be, I think it was brand is what your names range was for this. And, or no, I'm sorry, it wasn't brand, it was coffee. They named the coffee brands, they just named them coffee. So put that in there, coffee. Now, we want it to look back at the row it's currently on. So there was obviously some that were just labeled none, and some were labeled Starbucks, and some were labeled folders, as you see here. But we want to get this first row right. So we want it to look at B3 where none is. So we'll put B3 in there, and tell me, we want it to tell us the frequency of how many times none appeared in the survey. 11 times, none. Okay, so now that you've got that, though, you can pull it down, and it will change over to B4, B5, B6, B7 as you drag down. And it tells you, okay, there were 12 times Starbucks was chosen, 9 times Folgers was chosen, 12 times Maxwell House was chosen, and so on. Now, we need to do a summation here, so we just need to add these up, I do believe. Calculate the number of surveys, so anytime that's calculates usually just, you know, sum or added up, or so we'll do equals sum and add that range up, and we'll get 50. Okay, now that we have this information, we can go next door into this next column and calculate the percent of, you know, how many times none was chosen, how many times Starbucks was chosen in a percentage format. So we'll go equals, and with percents, you should learn this, you know, way early on, like as a freshman in college, but if you didn't, it's the part over the whole. The part here is what you find in cell C3. So I'll put C3 in. I want it to look at the 11, and I want it to divide by. Now divide by is just your slash, of course, and I want it divided by 50, of course, to get the percentage amount. But I don't want to just type in 50. I don't want to do it like that. I want to be more sophisticated in the way I handle this. So I'm going to say, well, you know, I want it to go down to C8 every time. And obviously that's still 50, because that's what's in cell C8. However, you will get an error message if you don't do this next step, and that's to make C8 what we call absolute cell addressing. So absolute cell addressing, you want to put a $sign in front of that, in front of the C, and a $sign in front of the 8. Okay. And lock that in. And you say, well, what's that about? I don't know what absolute cell addressing is. Well, Excel understands that when you put $C and $8 in there, and that means you want it to not, when you drag down, you don't want it to come off C8. You want it to stay on C8 the whole time, okay? And so by doing that, it locks in on C8, and it doesn't, when it drags down, it doesn't drag down. It stays on C8 the whole time. So it doesn't go down here, it doesn't go down here, it doesn't go down there. If it did, you get error messages, right? So it keeps you from getting the error message. You can't divide by 0, and that's what it would see those blanks as. All right, so we pull that all the way down, and you can see that it calculated a nice percentage for each one. And I'm going to reset that border because it got kind of messed up. So I'm going to go back up to borders and say thick outside border. All right. Now, I think it wanted a histogram too, didn't it? Yeah. We got that done. So create a histogram for the brand of coffee preferred by the surveyed customers. So let's do that. We want to select, can probably, yeah, it's non-numerical, so I can probably do that. Let's try that out. Insert and our basic 2D column graph. Yeah. Notice it's got the brands of coffee down here on each column. We'll drag it down under here, and we'll stretch it out a little bit more. Now, again, click on any one of these and then right click on the column. Go down to Format Data Series. Again, we're going to adjust the gap width and bring that totally in. Boom, there's our histogram. We do need to change title to Histogram of Preferred Brand of Coffee. So let's get that done. And we'll make it bold. And we'll get rid of those grid lines. Delete. Okay. All right. So that completes part 2 of this. So I hope you've learned a lot on this, because some of this, of course, will appear on the final exam as well when we get around to that part. All right. And we probably should put column headings. Let me do that real quick. Of course, frequency goes on the y-axis, so let me go up to yeah, design, add chart element, and that's where our axis titles are. We need a horizontal one, we need a vertical one, and so vertical is obviously was frequency again. And we also, if you want to make that bold, of course, that would certainly help. And then axis title down here, we want that to be brand of coffee. And bold that as well. There we go. Okay, so stop and save what you've done. Remember, you always can pause, rewind, go back, play that part over and over again until you get it, and then move on to the next part of the video. That's the beauty of learning by video and learning on YouTube. Okay, so thank you for your time, and I hope this helps. And that's it for part 2 of the statistics part of week 5 in the MBA 610 class. Thank you for your time.